Yeah, it's on.
Okay. What's going on? It's good to be here.
Good to have you here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just met a couple weeks ago
Yeah.
via Kim, friend of the podcast.
Yep. Shout out, Kim.
Shout out Kim.
Yeah.
Yes, this is our second shout out actually. So this is fun. Part of what I love about doing this is getting the connection with other friends. It's hey, I have a friend that you need to
Yeah.
meet, interview, all the things. So that's the fun part of this.
So I worked with Kim a while ago at Perkins CPS, Perkins Counseling and Psychological Services in Wake Forest. And then Kim was like, oh, you got to meet Brittany. Because I told her one day, I was like, Kim, I got to make more therapist friends. I was like, I'm dying out here. I need normalization, like things like that. Right. And then, yeah, she just included us on an email one day. And then I was like, I hope she's not a serial killer. And here we are now.
Good thing with being a therapist is that at least there's some sort of credentials to say that, hey, you going through a background check at least.
Yeah.
At some point in time, you had to go through one.
Yeah. And that was me probably going on your Instagram page and being like, okay, well, she's not totally crazy.
Yeah. Thank you that you thought that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, and you're also from Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Born and raised. So I'm from, it's probably like 30 minutes north of Pittsburgh. But it's a pretty suburban town, but yeah, just a stone throw away from Pittsburgh though. Yeah. And then I went to college in Erie, PA, which is probably maybe my home was 2 hours or so. And then Erie is kind of like this blended family of Buffalo, Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, and all the surrounding cities.
So I've never been, but it would be cool to visit. So
you're from Philly. You've never been to Pittsburgh. You've never had fries and coleslaw on a sandwich.
No, I've never.
Oh my God.
Never. Whenever we thought about going somewhere, it was always, if we're going to take the 6-hour road trip, we're going south. We're not going to, we're not staying in the same state. Also, I feel like that Philly-Pittsburgh rival, huge.
Big time.
Big time. It's intense.
Yeah.
No. It's insane how sports makes cities so intensely despise one another.
Definitely.
In the same state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with you with the sense of the location of Pittsburgh, especially moving down here. And when patients are like, oh, where are you from? Or if I have an intake and they're like, what did you do like growing up or things like that? And I was like, well, I went to sporting events and I played sports and I just hung out with my friends because that was the only thing that you could do is you drink icy light and you go to Steelers games or you watch Steelers games and Penguins games and Pirates games with your friends. Right.
Yeah.
So there's this culture that like, if it sounds bad to say, but like, if you're not into sports, you're kind of the weirdo.
You're lost.
Yeah.
Cheap.
Exactly. It would have been hard to be a civilian of Pittsburgh without loving sports.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. Well, okay, something that we are planning to talk about today is the athletes and the relationship of sports athletes and the relationship to people who are in the athletic realms. I think that even coming from cities with very strong sports tribalism, I think what sports kids play, there's NFL teams or there's the pro hockey teams. They're like right in your backyard. And then there's the junior leagues that you have to be in. Yep. And those junior leagues, they have a dance team that you should go try out for. And they have a cheerleading team you should go try out for. So it really does hit on so many levels for the people in the surrounding areas for what their expectations are for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny thinking about even small talk. Because I think I've noticed in the South that weather, my office is upstairs. So usually I get somebody from the waiting room when we're walking upstairs and we have to turn a corner. We have like maybe 10 more seconds. So we have a total of probably 40 seconds of when we're walking from upstairs to downstairs, right? So that's 40 seconds of small talk that like I have to get good at. And one of the biggest things, this sounds like dumb, but one of the biggest things that I struggle with of being like, what do I talk about besides sports for small talk? Because that's what you talked about in Pittsburgh. That's what you talked about up north of, do you think Big Ben's elbow going to be okay this Sunday? Right. everybody knew what you were talking about, no matter who you were. It was kind of like a religion. Like,
Hmm.
even if you don't buy into religion, it impacts you in some sort of way, right?
Yeah.
And so it was on the radio and it was everywhere that you went. So small talk equaled talking about sports.
That's so interesting because the importance of small talk is that it creates a shared reality.
Yeah, builds a
It
foundation.
builds a foundation. And when people say, oh, I hate small talk, it's really understanding the mechanisms of what small talk brings because
Yeah,
it is an entry point into deeper conversations. Once you realize that you share a reality, that you're
yeah,
worried about Big Ben's elbow that weekend, uh, which I have no idea what that even means, but I'm going to go with you on this. Then it becomes that, oh, we share a common ground, and
yeah,
that builds a level of psychological safety to be able to continue a conversation or build some sort of rapport.
right. But I think growing up, everybody had that shared reality of there's this mutual understanding that we knew what to expect from Big Ben that Sunday. And we were privy to the information. When moving down here, yes, like, I mean, being close to Raleigh, everybody's a friend, ECU, NC State, UNC, like Duke and all that stuff. But there's still this sense of, but there's this transplants of like, there's not this foundation of small talk that you know that another person is going to ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like if I'm walking somebody upstairs and I say, Crosby's going into his 18th season right now, how about that? They're going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's not that entry point of, and that vulnerability going into, of something deeper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how everyone can live in the same place and have a different home team. That is interesting.
I would say that. And kind of like what we were saying before, especially Pittsburgh, because I mean, yeah, you have your rivers, but you have to be really creative about what you want to do as far as your social life and just development because people become fans because of generational fandom too. My mom and my dad are huge Steelers fans. Their parents were Steelers fans, and before were huge Steelers fans, right? So it's generational. It's just passed down, and maybe one day my kids are going to be right, but we're living in a different location now, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But for towns that don't have that generational fandom, kind of like the Panthers, like, do you know any Carolina Panthers fans?
Two that I can name.
So, uh, but I think it's going to take a while because they're still somewhat new. It's going to take a while for them to build that brand and to build that. It's like, oh man, I wonder what if I say to another patient of, I wonder what Bryce Young's going to do on Sunday. You know what I mean? People are going to be like, a light bulb's going to go off and like, oh, I know what he's talking about. Yeah. So I guess kind of going back to like the attachment aspect of what it's like having that basis with your parents and extended family too, right? Of that, it just builds that sense of normalcy. And maybe this is kind of like a dangerous road, but it fuels connection and having basic needs met too, right?
Yeah.
And your emotional needs. Have you ever seen Welcome to Wrexham?
Hulu.
Hulu.
Yes, and I stopped that subscription, but
God, they brought a sports psychologist on. And did you see that?
no.
What it says? Okay. But they brought a sports psychologist on and they were just asking the guys and about what they missed the most during COVID. And a tear came to his eye and he was like, I just really miss talking about sports with my dad. Right.
Yeah.
And that is just, and I bet there's a lot of people out there that look at that and be like, does fantasy football really play that big of a role in a person's or in relationships, or you talking about sports or after a Steeler game really have that much of an impact on somebody? Is that surface level? But man, I will argue all day that that has to be a foundation to something too, right?
A
Yeah,
sense of belonging, a sense of something that if purpose is it's something bigger than myself, people feel that in sports teams.
yeah,
It feels like there's this whole community. I think in Wrexham they depict this. I'm a huge fan of Ted Lasso.
yeah,
And I love the story arc of Ted Lasso and how it was everyone around the town is in it to win it for this team. And no matter
Yeah.
how many times they lose, it was still we're a fan of this team, of Richmond, and if we're thinking of Ted Lasso. But it's everyone's talking about it. Everyone feels it. Everyone feels the passion towards the sense of we have a shared belonging and we're all cheering for the same thing to happen.
Yeah.
So it's like a shared mission, which is big.
Yeah.
It feels like we don't see it in a lot of places where that can happen.
Yeah.
Sports is one place where that does happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I was even thinking about the Damar Hamlin situation.
Enlighten me.
All right. So Damar Hamlin was someone he went to Pitt, but he plays for the Buffalo Bills, and they were playing the Cincinnati Bengals maybe a year and a half ago, and it was a Monday night, right? So it was Monday Night Football, and Damar Hamlin was a safety or one of the backup safeties for the Bills. And someone was running, I believe it was a Cincinnati running back, was running the ball. Safety comes up, tries to hit him, and hits him in a really weird spot. And Damar Hamlin goes down, and he's not moving.
Oh my God.
And he's just unconscious at this point. And so I believe it was the guy who got tackled or one of the other players immediately can recognize of being like, okay, somebody needs to go out here, like having this instinctual that like something's off, right? So EMS gets out there, all the athletic trainers, and everybody's huddled around. So on TV, you're just wondering, you might be thinking, oh, torn ACL or like a bad injury, right? But later on, like they had the whole stadium go silent. It's in Buffalo. So Buffalo kind of being similar to Pittsburgh's, like this united front of like we wear our emotions on our sleeves for the Buffalo Bills. We circle the wagon all the time, right?
Mhm.
So you're watching this person pretty much go into being unconscious, and they say for even for a moment he had passed away, right? Which was crazy because we're watching, like America's watching this on TV right now. And so my group chats are popping off and being like, are you guys seeing this right now? And so there's also this sense of like, but that was as horrifying as that was to watch. It was also this sense of humanizing the person behind the sport, recognizing that this person had a family, and they went into all the specifics of, oh, here's he went to college with. He also has personal friends on like other teams and things like that. And that's something that we just, I think, also do a really poor job of dehumanizing humans in sports in general. But that was a moment that we got to see how, I guess, how human and how raw this sports can bring us, right? Yeah. And so I guess just to finish the story, that ultimately he was rushed to the hospital and someone had started CPR, and it was CPR that saved him, right? And now he's still plays to this very day. Like I had a couple of interceptions last season, and he's one of the starting guys on the Buffalo Bills now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That is a wild story. I think the dehumanization of players, it's almost like there is this Greek god-like aspect to them that we think that they're above all immortal, which is almost the dehumanization of them.
Yeah.
Because everyone's cheering, everyone's watching the best of the best on the field playing.
Yeah.
And then someone gets hurt, and the idea of us all wanting to scream, get up, you're fine, because I think we want them to be fine, yet it is a very human sport, and the CTEs and all the other things that come into football in particular.
Definitely.
And hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use the example a lot of, especially when I'm working with athletes, I ask them, have you ever watched a Little League World Series game? But that just happened. I mean, it was just happening in Williamsport. Yeah, I guess right now at the end of August, right? And so have you ever seen a game?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's right down the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever the player's going out to bat, or if they're pitching, ESPN will have a little logo on the side, on the corner. It will say their name, their nickname, the person who inspires them the most, what their favorite meal is, and just like little fun facts about them, right? And so, I mean, it's cute, like seeing like a 12-year-old or 11-year-old going up and you got all these things, right? But it's funny because I guess also steal from the Seattle Seahawks trainer, the concept of like decoupling of you have this kid and then you also have this athlete, right? And of
Mhm.
being able to decouple that identity and understand like there's so much more to him than just being a baseball player right now. And that just from that little fact sheet that we know. But now fast forward him to like 8 to 9 years, you no longer have that stuff. You have his batting average, his on base percentage, and just his general statistics from his career from a season, right? Yeah. And people can bet on him and like, I don't know, this whole 9 yards. Yeah. So it's interesting to see like the progression of how we treat kids as athletes and then how sometimes that fades away, especially when you get into like the high school and into college sports too.
What have you seen in your practice when you're working with kids, athletes, young adults? What is it that people are coming in with? What might bring them into therapy?
Yeah. Um, so it's probably a different array of things. I would say it usually doesn't start with not mental performance, but usually doesn't start with performance in general. Usually there's some type of adverse experience that happens outside of sports. And then eventually we start talking about sports. For most of my patients, they'll come in for an intake and they'll have like interpersonal conflict with family or anxiety, OCD symptoms, depressive symptoms. And then ultimately we shift gears because nobody comes in for the same thing that they're coming in for. Nobody continues to talk about that, right? So ultimately we end up talking about sports too. But I think for my brand, I mean, athletes are they'll come in because they're like, oh, I know that Drew works with athletes, but this is going on. And then ultimately we end up talking about sports.
No, it is
Yeah.
because it's not, it's something that's outside of the sports realm,
Yeah.
but it does impact them, imagining it in their craft.
Yeah. In the craft. And they might not be seeing it in the games because they're able to get it, they're able to achieve and get into flow state. But that also might be from trauma of being able to like compartmentalize, right? That's a big coping skill that I feel like a lot of athletes and humans in general have been able to do is just compartmentalize different parts of their life and say, okay, I know I'm able to turn this on, especially during games. So they might actually see it a little bit more in practice or transitional times too, of if a coach leaves, if their parents get divorced, if they have an argument with their siblings, or I mean, or if they just have like an enormous crash out after practice too, right? Yeah,
It's something like thinking of athletes and how that identity piece is so strongly tied for them. This isn't separate from me, it's who I am. And thinking about that sense of belonging and how I am a soccer player, but I'm also a soccer player that's playing on this team. And because these two things it's part of who I am and it's also how I belong. And if an injury or if some sort of circumstance takes that away from me, then
yeah,
who am I? What do I do? How do I belong? And wondering if that has shown up for some of the clients that you work with.
yeah. I would say definitely, absolutely with self-esteem. And most of the travel kids that I work with who play travel sports also play for their school. So that is really interesting because it's hard not to compare. It's hard not to compare your travel team of like, oh, I love this coach, but I don't really like the girls or the guys that I play with on my travel team compared to their school team. They might feel a little bit more challenged and pushed in that sense too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say it is really interesting for like multi-sport athletes or people who try to balance that, especially in the South. Like I don't know, I feel like I've seen this like more and more of there's more opportunities for like higher level athletes too.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I honestly have no concept for that.
I think the triangle just offers that. It's like you're able to go to Durham, you're able to go to Raleigh. I think that just offers more than that versus like growing up in Pittsburgh and you play football, and the Pennsylvania sports are kind of dominated and more revered versus down here it's not. I don't know. I feel like it's more spread across. Like it's okay if you play soccer,
Yes,
more socially acceptable.
sure. And
Yeah.
I wonder if the college
Yeah.
influence has more to do with that because I think in other places, when there are professional sports teams, those are the dominant sports teams that everyone's cheering and talking about.
Yeah.
But when it's collegey, it's, well, we know kids are going to be going to college most likely if they're playing sports. And it's, well, okay, well, we want you to go to college to play a sport in college. And of course, all of these colleges around here have programs for youth. So starting from a young age, it could be that you're affiliated with, Duke or UNC or NC State in some way if you go
Yeah.
to their camps or if you're involved with their coaches or their players.
Yeah.
So I think that it does start young because it looks like, oh, this is an avenue that looks achievable. Whereas pro sports, it's you have to be the best of the 1% and it feels maybe a little bit out of reach.
Yeah, definitely. Achievable is a really good word because this past summer, I feel like I was working with a lot of seniors and when decision day came, they would be like, do I want to go D1? Do I want to continue to push myself and know that for the next 4 years, I'm going to have a rigorous schedule, but I want to come home on the weekends and be able to tell everybody I played soccer at Duke and everybody's going to look at my Instagram and see that I have this sense of accomplishment. However, that comes at a cost, right? Maybe you're not going to play on the field as much. Maybe you're going to have to sacrifice sleep, socialization, academic, going home on breaks, missing out on so many events versus going to a D2 school and having more playing time, but you might not get that D1 badge of honor and you're not going to have the Instagram filled with playing soccer at Duke. It also comes down to like things that you value the most. And usually when I'm working with, I think that's another aspect of it too, decoupling the identity of the athlete and the individual. You're also working on their values and their inner child too. What are things that they valued the most at 7 years old whenever they were playing the sport in the backyard too? Versus what are the values that they have right now? We'll go through a list of your relationship with your coach, your relationship with your teammates, what the college campus looks like, what's the feel of the university, right? And then having the ability that if you are a backup, do you plan to meet and talk to other people on the team? Yeah. So yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it, but I notice that my conversations go more and more about things that they are somewhat anticipating about school. I guess the decision day of do I go D2, have more playing time versus going D1, not having much playing time, and I have that badge of honor.
And when you're saying, what do you value? I'm imagining that family and external pressure has something to do with that.
Yeah.
That if a family values Duke as just a institution,
Yeah.
and if I could play at Duke and have less playing time versus going to a D2 school, but this isn't just about you, it's about all of us. And
Yeah.
if that also shows up, because I think decoupling the athlete and the individual, but then there's that crossover of how does that impact their relational life?
Yeah.
And where do those values come from? And who's influencing their decision in how they self-identify? And
especially if there is that pressure, then you kind of take away that safety net. And you're also saying, well, if I go home on breaks, is mom or dad going to love me as much or value me as much if I choose to go to a different school that they're really wishing me to go to right now? Right. And then sometimes there's this warped, anxious attachment feeling that might be activated in that of, well, has sports really made this into something that's more conditional versus unconditional right now? So that can be a really dangerous game as far as parents go. And I think that parents have the phrase I hear a lot is, oh, I only want the best for my kid. Right. I guess I think of the concept of like intention versus impact. Like I'm intending that I want the best for my kids and I'm intending that I want to push my kid to be the best version of themselves. And I know my kids, so I know what they want versus the impact that they're having on the kid could be detrimental.
Right. I want what's best for my kid isn't the same as I want my kid to be the best, but there is that crossover that does happen.
Yeah.
Well, if I want what's best, then they are the best, right? It's
Yeah.
that, and those two things often actually compete with one another.
Yeah.
We were just talking about the Michael Gervais
Yeah.
podcast, Finding Mastery, and he has this story about working with a young gymnast with severe OCD. She comes in, they work together, and he says to the mom, if I help her with her OCD, she may not be an Olympic gymnast. That the part that is that she's suffering from may actually be the part that is making her great. And the mom said, thank you very much, walks out the door, basically goes, okay, that's it. She's just gonna struggle.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah. So I think that, and again, it's that, okay, well, if you see, your kid and how they have this talent and it's, well, they could go to be the, gold medalist, or they could, I think that there are those like shiny aspirations.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to, again, decouple who is it for? Is it for me? Is it for my kid? Is it for us? Is this a shared thing?
Yeah.
Or is this this is what I want for you? Or is this truly what you want? And
Right.
there's a lot that goes into that. It's all intertwined and very complex, as family systems are.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I feel like that Michael Gervais goes over is the cost of, if you're going to be an Olympic athlete, that you have to recognize that there's going to be a cost. If you're wanting to be a great coach or anything like that, that there's a cost to it. There's going to have to be a cost to that too. Because I'm sure, I guess I'm just using my imagination, but like the concept of counting in gymnastics, right? Of having ruminations and repetitions and so many compulsive sensations that come from that counting too, right? Yeah, I can't even imagine how to, and learning to compartmentalize that and making sure that that doesn't run your life, right?
Because when we as therapists talk about compartmentalization, I sometimes think that there's a negative connotation to it, because it could be that that is a trauma response, or that it does serve. But on the flip side, it is a very smart strategy that really works for high performers, because when you're out doing your craft, you can't be thinking about the test that you have coming up, or what my ex-boyfriend might be doing with his new girlfriend, or whatever it might be.
Right.
Because all of that is beside me. I have something I need to focus on. And so it's a smart strategy. I think when it becomes the sole strategy, that's maybe where we get into some tricky territory.
Yeah.
Because then it's truly, when you talk about identity, it almost becomes like a more fractured identity than a whole one.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't know, I'm also just thinking about like just general stages of development with Erickson. And I should have said this at the beginning, but I primarily work with like adolescents, like 14 through probably their early 20s. Of identity is the most important part, how you want to be seen in so many different avenues, right?
So I guess on that note, because I feel like the generational talk right now has become even more apparent in the differences in generations, millennials versus Gen Z versus Gen Alpha, and so on and so forth. And wondering how much, and we can't deny social media has a role in this for all of us, because millennials are the generation that started to grow up with this, but Gen Z was the one who was like, hey, I've been taking videos of myself since I was 5. So you millennials are actually you're old school.
We're the OGs. Come on now.
Exactly. Yeah. So now I'm even imagining going even younger and what identity means. And while we have this freedom and identity, I also think that freedom, it comes with the cost of just ultimate confusion and lack of guidance and choice, decision fatigue, all of it. So I'm imagining what that's like working with athletes in your practice in those age cohorts.
Yeah. So I actually used the word earlier, but crash out. Do you hear that a lot?
No, but I can imagine what that looks like.
Yeah. It's almost normalized at this point. of how many times a day that I hear the word crash out, I'll just be like, oh my God, yeah, just had a crash out after practice, but it's not a big deal. Just like, yeah, what are you talking about? It kind of is a big deal, right? But yeah,
So when they're describing a crash out, what does that look like?
when I have when I have a 16-year-old telling me about a crash out, they are typically saying that sometimes their body is convulsing. I guess there's a spectrum of crash out,
Sure.
but let's go to the worst of the worst of there's screaming, there's crying, there's a lot of reactivity. There might be convulsing, there might be shaking, maybe some disassociating. That's I guess that in a nutshell would be like the worst of the worst of a crash out. Yeah. But I guess it's also somewhat subjective, but that's what I've had it described to me. But I also didn't grow up in that language. Yeah.
No,
Yes.
I didn't even think of if I told my parents I had a crash out, I think they would just look at me and say, "Okay, are you good now?"
Yeah.
I don't even know if that yeah, that language really didn't exist growing up.
Right. It's extreme and it's funny the concept of just like when we're going back to attachment of how another person responds to a crash out too of especially of athletes. Like let's say you're pitching and you give up 6 runs in a game and you guys lose the game and then a crash out might ensue on the way home with the parents, right? And while your son is crashing out, does that mean that you have to rescue him from his feelings, right? And so there's this sudden pressure of being like, oh, I need to make sure that my boy doesn't quit right now. I need to make sure that he's not going to make a decision that he's going to regret and I just want to make him feel better, right? But is it really necessarily our job as caregivers to making sure that they're feeling better, especially when it comes to sports? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think kind of emotionally navigating crash outs and what that means as far as being accepting of, I'm going to let them experience this raw emotion right now. Because I think that if you're not allowing them to experience that, that's also going to hit them 10 times harder one day too.
So how would you coach a parent through this? If they're going twice this season, my kid had this crash out experience and it felt for me out of control and I had no idea what to do.
I encourage almost like this, like physical connectivity of, let's go back to the example of, let's say that your son is, as you're driving, having this crash out of being like, I can't believe my life is over. Everybody hates me. Um, my world is ending because to them, like it definitely feels like that, right? So I say, all right, you just literally put your hand on their back, uh, and literally don't say anything at all. And literally and just being present with them, which is super hard, right? And I also say the role of at least statements of how dangerous that can be too. Of, well, at least you have a big, beautiful, at least you have a big, beautiful family. At least you have gifts and talents of of being able to play this sport. And saying at least statements at the wrong time can be so damaging for an athlete too, because those words are somewhat true. I mean, they are true, but a person isn't ready to hear that during that time of you can't create gratitude in when you're thinking that your world is falling apart.
Exactly. And the at least statements, even I am feeling myself get annoyed at them. I think at any time it feels dismissive. And
Yeah.
especially when someone is having a moment that is really challenging to go with at least brush it off, make it feel better so that if you stop, then you just be grateful
Yeah.
and it's totally dismissive of the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny if I'm coaching a parent or a caregiver through that situation, because I look back on like my ability to extend, like putting my hand on a person's back or giving somebody a hug or like involving myself in that vulnerable moment when I think of, and the first thing I think of is sports and how I feel comfortable doing that. Whenever I'm giving someone a hug with all my equipment on is the most natural and secure that I feel. Versus if I'm giving somebody a hug, like if a patient asks for a hug, I'm dripping sweat.
This is
Yes, 100%. And I'm like gritting my teeth, like, yeah, of course you can have a hug, but I really hope you don't touch my back because you're gonna feel my sweat.
it's uncomfortable for me.
Exactly. So it just, I don't know. It's funny thinking back on like me encouraging parents to offer that sense and like you're not really necessarily rescuing them from that feeling, but you're feeling connected with them,
Yeah.
right?
That connectivity is more than words. It's more of a I'm here for you, I got you. You can have this really hard time and be the tornado and I'll be the grounding point. And
Yeah,
so it's that you get to have this moment and I'm here for you. I
yeah.
got you. I can be the steady anchor while you're going through the storm.
A safety net. And that's ultimately the goal that we want to build with attachment too. Of I got you. And even though you're worried about your world ending right now, it doesn't mean that it's going to fall apart right now. Yeah. And that I'm even if your world does end, I want to be standing right here next to you too. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautifully said. So when you say safety net, that's how you define it.
Yeah. I like the word safety net. I know some people use the word fail safe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't love that as much.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan.
It
I
doesn't
don't
feel natural.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. People have different frameworks that they use, but I don't know. I love using the word the safety net. Yeah, just because I think people can use mental imagery and draw so much easier from using the word safety net than anything else in their life too.
Absolutely. When you said it, I envision it of, oh, right, if you fall.
I don't know, like my friend had drew me this diagram of two poles, right? And on top of the poles is kind of like this tightrope, right? And let's say that we're walking across this tightrope and it's an adverse experience of, man, my coach yelled at me today, or why is he so hard on me versus other people, or I'm having drama with another girl on a team or anything of that nature. And we have to walk tight ropes all the time in sports and in life in general, right? But then what gives us the courage to continue to walk across those tight ropes is a safety net of knowing that something's going to catch us too.
Right. Because life and sports aren't separate. And especially s- life in sports is a whole another thing in itself. We were talking about siblings earlier and sibling dynamics. And I also think of teammate dynamics and all the I love you and we're competing against one another. And that can feel like very much a tear for the attachment of a team, the bonding of people going through the same thing.
Playing an individual sport versus playing a team sport. Like I said earlier, I have two little sisters and playing hockey and tennis. Obviously, they always came to watch me, but it was interesting seeing what those experiences were like watching me and the ideas that were formed about a team and their own mental performance, how much they push themselves. And even we'll talk about gender too, like what it was like watching how maybe my mom and dad treat me as a guy and the oldest within the family versus my mom and dad, how they treated my sisters and being younger too. I would say the relationship with parents, I would say, so both my sisters ran track, uh, and there was definitely a gentler approach with track and it being a lot more individualized too. And there's a camaraderie of, oh, how did Rebecca do today? How did Sarah do today? How did and other parents just coming around and celebrating. Like every time somebody steps over the line, it's a celebration, right? Versus in hockey or in a lot of other sports that it's not always celebration, right? So I think based on the types of sports maybe that we played was very different. The celebration and them trying to, and they were typically like very strength based and especially like as parents, they tried to shield us and protect us. Like as a hockey goal, it was very hard hearing the truths of what other people had to say about my performance sometimes too, right? And I knew what people were saying after bad games, but I thought my parents did an amazing job attempting to shield me from that. And so I would say that was probably like one of the biggest differences.
That's a dynamic I never thought of before, which is being a parent in the stands, hearing other parents talk about your kid who's the goalie on the team, and how challenging that would be in terms of hearing that as a parent and not wanting to maybe deck somebody, and also then shielding you from that too. Because it might be that those words get said in the car on the way home with your teammate in it, and then those words getting back to you and it being a whole
Exactly.
thing. Yeah. The individual sports versus team sports is a different dynamic in itself.
And to be honest with you, I don't really work with a lot of people who play individual sports. And I'm kind of just realizing that right now. It is mostly team-based sports. I would say the most popular one that I treat is volleyball. Volleyball and baseball. Volleyball, baseball, and then softball.
So friend Andrea and Meredith.
Yeah.
But I view baseball and softball too. It's a team sport, but there's an individual component
Yeah.
because everyone knows who the pitcher is, and everyone, I mean, just being again from Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Phillies, and everyone's talking about how like what the pitching was that week. And then the batters, like it's like so there's a team component, but there is this very individual component to it as well because you're not passing the ball to one another. It depends on what the individual is doing on the plate. It depends how the individual is catching the ball in the outfield. So there is this interesting, I think, and both dynamic in those kinds of sports.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I know the accessibility that we have. I mean, we mentioned the inner child earlier, the accessibility that a kid has to playing that sport for the very first time, of picking up a wiffle ball bat and just playing with your friends out back, right? And what that feels like, and preparing for and picturing and imagining what a big moment must feel like, right? Versus going fast forwarding 20 years and you being in that big moment too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now in sports psychology, we have this crux of, well, do we go the reframing route of being able to, like what you said earlier, like top to bottom of fixing your cognitions and weakening these negative cognitions and strengthening these positive cognitions to increase self-esteem, confidence, engage in flow state, right? Or do we go and do more of a DBT and skill set and inner child work that's based around feelings of, because athletes love skills and that's what they're good at. So you give somebody a set of skills to work on throughout the week or weeks to come, and they're like, yeah, I'm all in, give them to me. And typically like they'll adhere to it, but when it comes to this like measuring sensations, they might have a little bit more difficult time.
Which is also interesting because, well, I guess it depends on the person because I would like to, or I think that athletes can also tap into what it's like to be inside their body, but I also think that they can also be very disembodied.
Yeah.
So because it's you play through the pain, you just keep going. You don't feel the thing, you just do the thing.
Right. Yeah.
Here's a question. What do you think the differentiator is between mental health and mental performance? And when do we maybe use strategies that overlap? Because I think when we think of mental health, we think about what is unwell that we need to treat. I think that the sort of, I guess, sentiment around mental performance is that you already have it all together and now we're just optimizing. You can take a vitamin today version.
Yes. Yes. It's funny. You use the word like unwell. I really like that because I think of some type of dysfunction of when I think of mental health versus mental performance. But I also think I kind of hate that I'm saying this right now because it's also kind of cliche in the athlete world, process versus outcome.
Yes.
When your outcome kind of outweighs the process that you're currently attempting to engage with, that there's this disconnect between the two, and and also a person's ability to engage in flow state of getting into that. It's not as easy as it used to be able to activate this state of mind that typically it might come easy to a person. So I would say flow state, outcome versus process,
Mhm.
and are like probably the two biggest things of mental performance versus mental health, where like you had said with the unwell and just general dysfunction,
Mhm.
something.
And flow state, how would you describe flow state? Which I know can be a very big and sometimes controversial definitions maybe of it, but
Yeah.
that's, there's probably a million of them out there, but how would you describe it?
Some people would describe it as like this meditative type thinking. For meditation, I use the example of it's a house. When you're engaging in meditation, a thought knocks on your door. You can imagine that it's a person. And a person comes in. If it's a good thought, you want to, and the house is pretty much your mind. And if it's a good thought, you want to invite that thought in. You want to crack open a beer with it. You want to get out a koozie, set your feet up on the dining room or on the coffee table. You guys sit down, chop it up for a while, and then you guys are good to go. And that thought leaves. But let's say it's a bad thought. How do you welcome that thought in and then exit it right out the door? That you don't give any energy or sense of entertainment towards that thought. So for meditation, you're still experiencing thoughts, but you're just attempting to manipulate the duration and strength that that thought is having at that moment. So I don't know. Some people say that flow state is just meditation, but I would argue that there's more of this sense of that um, you're not even conscious of of what you're thinking of. That in meditation you are conscious. You're just having an easier time managing your tolerance towards these things and your sensations towards these thoughts. Before flow state, there's just this unconscious, like I'm gonna use the word flow
Yeah.
of to these sensations that your body is telling you, but you don't need to necessarily activate like that prefrontal cortex into it.
Right. That it's the space and time feels very fluid.
Yes, fluid.
And
That's a good way to say it.
and so that there isn't, because there's a typically, I think when I think with flow state, there's typically a task, but that task doesn't necessarily mean that it's a struggling task, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's this easy thing that you're just, doing. I think that it's being fully immersed in the moment,
Yeah,
that nothing else matters. And so then because it's this fully immersed experience,
yeah,
any of those thoughts or things that are coming in, it's sort of like there's this closed door and it's just bouncing off
yeah,
for that time being, and that space and time is very much we're in the present
yeah,
of whatever the thing is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think a big part of flow state is imagination. Because imagination, I think when predominantly is really strong at the ages of like 3 and 4, right? And so we kind of almost go back to this sense of that the world is perfect. We're almost invincible, that we're combining so many great things about our development into this one of, man, it feels like I'm Steph Curry and I can't miss a 3-pointer right now. I can imagine and I know that all every shot that I shoot right now is going to go in.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a pretty amazing feeling, but it takes some training to get there.
Yeah. I think we can experience it more than we think that we can. This is where I think the performance versus mental health almost divides, because when we think of the unwell, it almost then feels like the moments of well and full functioning seem like those are going to be more rare than the baseline.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when we think about mental performance, it's more like we welcome in the baseline of you're doing all right and how do we level up.
Yeah.
But I think that both is there are moments, and it depends for everyone, is it when you're doing all right and you have those moments where you are fully immersed in the moment.
Yeah.
And there is a level of awareness. Like think of like the mindfulness being like it's presence, open awareness, and non-judgment. And that those three components are in whatever it is that you're doing. It's like if you're doing that throughout when you're writing or when you're playing an instrument or a sport,
Yeah.
they can happen. And imagination is the most powerful tool. If
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when people talk about, I think too, we're in a the therapy language gets thrown around a lot and people will say I'm dissociating. I'm like, or are you daydreaming? And I think and daydreaming's cool. What are
Yeah.
you daydreaming about? When your thoughts are at play,
Yeah.
they're at play. This doesn't have to be a pathology. It's okay. Welcome it in. Cool. What are you daydreaming about? What's on your mind?
Right.
Yeah. This can be fun and if you allow it.
Yes. It's interesting, especially like doing an intake of how they're measuring of it being like, is this a mental health or mental performance too?
Mm-hmm.
That if you're going to enter the sports world, you have to be really diligent about what you're working with too.
Yeah, because I imagine that the saying that your greatest strength is your greatest weakness, the thing like that you're using maybe the most, like if it is that, like kind of think of the Michael Gervais story of if it is the OCD that is keeping
Yeah.
so like that is what keeps an athlete so dialed in.
Yeah.
That's also the thing that is creating suffering.
Yeah.
Then it is sort of a how do we do this? How do we go with, okay, let's keep the strengths part and work on the unwell part. And now there might be this sort of inverted correlation here where you start to go with the better you get at this, the maybe the lesser function you have around this, but can that be okay?
And I think that they have to be okay. They have to be okay with that too, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And hopefully their parents are too. Hopefully they have the support around them that everyone's on board with it.
So did you play sports growing up?
I was a dancer growing up. It's Jonathan Haidt. Do you know his work? He wrote Calling the American Mind and the Anxious Generation. I believe he's a psychologist, sociologist out of NYU, I believe.
Yeah.
I might have to look that up. But it was sport. He listed sports that if you want to be the most unhappy in. And I can't remember what it was for men, but for women, it was ballerina. Be unhappy, go be a dancer. And I was like, that is funny, but also I understand it. I'm like, I can get why.
Yeah. At Mercyhurst, where I went to school, there was a dance program. The thing that I think about the most is, especially playing hockey growing up and things like that, like your mistakes are measured by the scoreboard and what specifically is measured in sports. And with dance, I mean, this sounds bad, but like body type is like a big aspect that's measured. And I can't imagine like putting so much value into like body type or having this confused aspect of like, what am I putting my value in the most, especially with the relationship with dance, when it's something that's just supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It fucks you up a little. So I think about, I mean, every studio, you're surrounded by mirrors. Yeah. So every aspect around, and like, look, growing up in the 90s, it was, we had there were some cultural movements that I think have led up to this moment in time. So, back then it was you want to be the Britney Spears backup dancer, or you want to be the backup dancer to NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Justin Timberlake, whoever it is that you kind of, those are the things that you look at as those are your gold stars, right?
Yeah.
Now, parents are going, this is a hobby. This is not going to be because even if you make it big, you're not making NFL money. You're not making the same money that someone making it in baseball or whatever is going to be making. So you're constantly auditioning and everything else. But it looked great. But it looked bright and shiny. And we had teachers who were doing that. And that was the fun part. Like, oh my gosh, you got to meet Justin Timberlake. You were a backup dancer for Tony Braxton. Like, you were on a TV show. Like, those were some of our teachers and people who we knew and idolized too.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think that one, you're constantly looking at yourself in the mirror for everything. So it's what does your turnout look like? Is your foot pointed or not? Is your leg as straight as it could be? Can you bend your leg behind your head? How flexible can you be? You're spotting yourself in the mirror when you're turning. Hey, that turn didn't look out too well. Whatever it might be. And then you're doing it as yourself, but also then all together collaboratively. And
Yeah.
then there's the, some people who had solos and doing it solely. And then it was some people who weren't getting those, and some people were competing and some people who weren't. So it was, and the Dance Moms, real, very real. The Dance
Yeah.
Mom show nailed it for, I think, every person who's ever done dance when identified with a part of that show, because they went, oh yeah, we have dance moms like that at our studio for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the whole culture around it is terrifying.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I bet it was.
And now, like, we have like Taylor Swift, whose backup dancers look very different from what they did back in the 90s. In the
Yeah.
90s, it was you had to look a certain way, you had to be a certain way. If you want to be a Rockette, you have to be at least 5'7". So that alone was,
Yeah.
who's making it there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that it's having a shift, but it's still when I think about if people putting their kids in dance, I'm like, do it because it's great for kinesthetic awareness. So I think that it does translate to sports for just in general. I think it's a great base, but I wouldn't say stay there. Don't compete. It has like such a pro in the sense of having that body awareness.
Yeah.
But again, I wouldn't say to live in that world.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What would you think about incorporating another sport into dance?
Great. Actually, when I was in high school, the football players had to take dance. So we did. So I was part of the dance team in high school. Dance shows, and I was dance captain. So then it was me, the other dance captain, and then the teacher who taught dance. We taught the football players basically a form of ballet, essentially, because the NFL players are apparently doing it. Apparently that was a trend at one point. So it was kind of fun to be around these guys who were trying to bend their knees, and they're going like, am I doing this right? It's like, you got it.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a great thing to integrate. And I teach yoga now. So I think things like yoga, I think there can be other ways of doing it, but I think having something that isn't focused on, again, process over outcome, something that's really not outcome driven and more process driven, so that people can be more inside their bodies, I think would actually help them accelerate as athletes and potentially prevent injury too.
Yeah.
Because if you just keep ignoring that shoulder pain and you're not thinking about it, it's gonna lead. I mean, now that we're in our 30s, I'm like, this stuff doesn't just bounce back overnight.
Right.
Wish I
100%.
would have known this earlier. But so I think that it can definitely incorporate.
It's so interesting hearing the thought process of dancing and like the type of judgment that can be born like off of something so little versus like if you're at a game, and there's not as much judgment in practice, but then at a game or at a recital, there's so much judgment there. But I'm not even sure how to word it. It seems like there's such a difference with dance and with a football game.
Yeah. Because it's also an art, it's a sport and an art, and with art you're on display.
Yeah.
Whereas with sport, you're on performance. So because it does have that crossover, you feel it. You feel like this is an art and I'm on display, and everything about this is aesthetically driven.
Yeah.
Whereas and there's also this kind of outcome that I need to nail this movement and this choreography. But I think that with team sports, it's more like, hey, it doesn't matter how pretty this looks. We just need to win.
That's really interesting. And I guess it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like individual and team sports. You mentioned yoga. Do we have enough time?
I don't even know what. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes.
But you had mentioned earlier, about teaching yoga.
Yeah.
So I recently started like getting into this yoga scene because like I need to keep up like with my flexibility if I want to continue to play hockey. Right.
Okay, great.
So I heard this lady and I was like, what does that even mean? But she said, if you live in a tight body, like go ahead and like go into like the saddle position or whatever it was. And I continue to think about that phrase of like, if you live in a tight body.
I kind of hate it. Okay, but also I can nerd out about this. Tightness we think of as flexibility, but it could actually be also a sign of weakness. So
Yeah.
so the tightness that when I think about living in a tight body, sometimes what that actually means is like we will say about this about our hamstrings all the time.
Yeah.
I can't do yoga, my hamstrings aren't flexible enough. We don't need to be creating more bendy hamstrings. We need to be lengthening our hamstrings. When we sit down, our hamstrings are being lengthened. People will often think, well, my hamstrings are tight, therefore I need to stretch them. And it's more like we need to engage them differently
Wow.
because they're actually not being used properly. So when I hear, I understand it living in a tight body, but I think that we all feel tension in places, especially again, as we're, we're a stressed out generation type of thing. But I think that it means a sign of a few things and that flexibility isn't really the way to go.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I think like yoga instructors like attempt to like use creativity to their advantage and like create this non-judgmental space that a person has and like that a person has as far as like their relationship with their body, right?
Yeah.
And but whenever she said that, I was like, I feel like she's trying too hard.
Yes. It's like there there is this crossover of getting creative and then what people get drawn into. And
Yeah.
most people can identify tightness in their body, but I don't necessarily means that, okay, then do this. Like you don't prescribe. I don't think as a teacher, as a yoga teacher, I'm not prescribing you to do anything. I am just offering you a sequence. I'm not saying that if you're tight that you need to do that. That is up to your physical therapist on what you need to do with that.
Yeah.
Like I'm here for you to just take what you need, and here's a few things. I think getting prescriptive gets a little dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Because I mean, look, I'm an extremist. I'll take something someone says and run with it. Oh, I'm in a tight body. Oh, stretch more. Great. I'll do that every day.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because I feel like sometimes that yoga is prescribed for perfectionists, and they're like, oh, well, someone might say, yoga is something that you can't really measure, and you have to build it into this non-judgmental space. But then they're like, okay, well, how can I be the best at yoga?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. I see people looking around the room like, what is this person next to me doing? What is their warrior three looking like? I'm nailing it. I didn't fall over. Like, yeah, that definitely does happen.
It's just, I don't know. I see a trend with that of like, oh, well, especially with perfectionists in particular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because if you take a perfectionist and say, just do this, they're going to go with, oh, I'll do that. And then take the yoga teacher training and be the best yoga teacher I can be. Like it's going to go into that for that person, most likely. So I think that it's more, and I understand that because it is more process driven, but it's a dangerous game to play because there are getting to the fullest expression of the poses. That's this thing that happens in yoga here in the West. I mean, yeah. And people will say, okay, I can do the fullest expression of pigeon and potentially blow out my knee. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then at what cost?
Right. At what cost?
Yeah.
Because you needed to do the fullest expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize that. I know you taught yoga too.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like a brand, therapist, yoga teacher. It's a whole brand.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
I say. Yeah.
But do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a sister.
Did she also do dance?
She did. Yeah. So we both did dance.
So I shared a little bit about what it's like growing up with two little sisters.
Yeah.
With the sports, but especially with dance, I kind of want to hear what it was like, older or younger.
She's younger. Yeah.
What was it like being the oldest and also watching her with dance? And I know you said earlier, like the kinesiology of dance, and that's appropriate. But then when did you ever feel like there were some adverse effects, and how did that come about with that?
Oh gosh, we don't have time for that. The short answer is there were some adverse effects. I think with the two of us, we took things very differently. My sister dabbled in a few other things. She did soccer longer than I did, I believe. we also went, and this also is kind of interesting. We also went to different schools. So she went to public school, I went to Catholic school. And then eventually it was that we both transitioned from the dance studio that we were going to.
Yeah.
So then she went to a different dance studio, and then I eventually just danced in high school. So
Yeah.
growing up, there was maybe about 5 or 6 years that we overlapped the same studio. Our mom really did a good job at creating boundaries around what dance meant for us.
Hmm.
It was we're not doing solos. We'll compete. We're not doing solos. We'll be, because you're in the group competition classes. We can do that, but I'm drawing these lines.
Did your mom dance?
She did not. So she just was, and my mom was also one that there was a she stayed out of the, because she wanted to stay out of the drama of it all too.
Yeah.
So that was another component of it, of the parental aspects.
Yeah.
So I credit her being the one that looked at each of us and what we both enjoyed about dance.
Wow. And I guess the reason why I ask about if your mom had danced, it seemed like she kind of already had these ideas going into dance of like what to know, what to shield you guys from, and what to allow you guys to immerse yourselves into this experience too. Right.
Yeah, she's just a very intuitive person. Anytime that she felt spidey senses around a person, she'd go, I don't know if I trust them. I don't know if I trust this. I don't know about that. Like she always had a keen eye to go in with, yeah, this is where I say yes, but this is as far as we're going to take that. We're not.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Mhm.
Mom and dad, if you ever listen to this, I'm sorry, but my dad is the furthest thing from a hockey player. He actually was a very, very skilled and played in college, very at a high level volleyball. He was really good at volleyball.
Okay.
And my mom played tennis, but entering into the hockey world, like the most knowledge that they had was um the Pittsburgh Penguins and watching them on TV and stuff like that, and seeing them beat the shit out of the Flyers.
Okay.
But, but that was pretty much it. So they had pretty limited experience of being like, what do we do for Drew right now? You know what I mean? Of him being in such a vulnerable position as a goalie, and how do we shield him from like adverse experiences that I know that it's just going to create a silent ride home, and how do we celebrate his wins and not get him overhyped, and making sure that he's not arrogant or maintains humility. And there were so many first time experiences that I wish I just could have been in my parents' minds and being like, man, how do we create that environment for what's our own, could be something that's very uncomfortable to us, right?
Yeah.
And like thinking about your mom, of kind of having that being skilled in intuitive thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, it's your parents' first time doing this.
Yeah.
And everyone's along for the ride.
Right.
So you were the practice kid.
I was a guinea pig, 100%. I was definitely the guinea pig. And yeah, like you said, with attachment, it's just so interesting that we don't think about that though. That's our parents' first time experience too, that we don't have at that age. We don't have a lot of grace for them. We think of them as like our superheroes and our protectors. So it's just interesting thinking about it in our 30s now, looking back at it.
And reflection. Oh, wow. We all went through that first time together. It does give a little bit more of a graceful outlook to parents, especially parents of the 90s.
Did you have any other questions, or is there anything that you're curious about?
If someone is an athlete and they're thinking about they're going, okay, I want to start this mental health performance journey for myself, what do you think would be a good starting point?
Good starting point. Besides going to therapy?
So, of course. So we're going to say therapy.
Yeah.
But what would they even look for in therapy? Because there's so many modalities. So would it be that someone look for CBT, DBT, someone who specializes with athletes? Yeah. If you were to give a general direction of go north and see what happens here, kind of thing.
Yeah. If you want to start small, and if you've never tried therapy before, I would recommend CBT, because I think from that framework of working from the top down and maybe they are like have good skills in emotional regulation in general first, like they have a good foundation and a good crux for everything, I would suggest that probably first.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds weird for me saying that. I'm surprised that I'm saying that right now.
Okay.
But if that doesn't work, then trying a lot more work with DBT, working with your own inner child and assessing those experiences. I know I told you the other week of like going through EMDR, and EMDR is about like rechecking yourself, like sensation work and the bell curve. And I'm getting really into this bell curve phenomenon of like what arousal means, right? So I would go there next of maybe not EMDR specifically, but like your your bell curve
Your
and like
somatic,
and your
yeah, the somatic based practices.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the your window of tolerance. I think that's something that I would suggest next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I think, look, CBT has, I think it's a good base.
Yeah.
It offers an entry point that's very accessible. There are tons of books, there's tons of podcasts, there's just tons of research around it. And I think that it is a generally people kind of say like, yeah, I know what that is at
Yeah.
least because it's been around for forever.
Exactly. And I'll tell you what, I think, and I say that first because there are people who need that.
Yes.
And I think that maybe it is just going to take some reframing that is going to work itself out, right? But I think there's other points that people might need, kind of what we were talking about before about like where it goes from like mental performance to like mentally being unwell. So that would be my biggest suggestion.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sweet. So,
But I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I would suggest. No, I think that's it.
that's it.
Yeah.
Cool. Where can people find you?
People can find me on Psychology Today. People can find me through the Perkins Counseling and Psychological website. Yeah, my bio's on there. But if you're a Flyers fan, I can't guarantee you're gonna get in.
We checked that on the intake form. Like, here's your sports team is now on the intake form.
But like I said, I'm on Psychology Today, and we're based out of Wake Forest too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, feel free to come aboard. I've been doing therapy for about 6 years now, going towards the athlete world more in the past like couple of years. And I feel like that's where like my bread and butter is. And it feels really good being able to develop a niche too.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, glad that you're going into that niche. Niche.
I've said niche and I was like, what am I saying right now?
I don't know. Niche. Yeah, it's one of the two. Someone let us know.
Yeah.
Put it in the comments. So, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course, anytime. And until next time, everyone, stay connected.